This special meeting of the Municipal Council for Thursday, October 26, 2017 to order. This time I'd ask you please stand and join in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I would ask if you have a cell phone or similar electronic device, if you would please turn it off or at least put it on silent or airplane mode, as it does interfere with our broadcast to other parts of the city. This meeting is being televised live at this time. As this is a special meeting, to begin with, I would ask our City Clerk, Steve Withers, to please read the notice for the special meeting, please.
Date, October 3rd, 2017, to the members of the Municipal Council from Frank Cook, Council President. Councilors, by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter, I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, Thursday, October 26, 2017, at 6 p.m. The place in the council chambers, and the purpose of this meeting is for an update on the proposed Attleboro High School project and any other matters / other legal matter that may come before the council. CC Mayor Kevin J. Dumas.
Thank you. So again, as was mentioned, the purpose of this meeting is for the council to receive an update on the Attleboro High School project. The last time that members of the council were invited to for an update on the project was back in March. Things have certainly changed since then. That was a joint meeting at the high school that was held in conjunction with the school committee. So again, this meeting this evening, as I said, the purpose of it is an update. So we will not be taking any public input this evening on this matter. A series of presentations that will be made, and then there will be time for questions. I will check later with Mr. Jacoby, who I'll introduce in a moment, relative to how we want to handle questions this evening as we go along at the end. So I'll come back to you in a few moments, Mr. Jacoby. I did want to make mention that we did invite members of the school committee to join us this evening, as well as members of the school administration. At this time, I would respectfully request the chair of the school committee, my counterpart on the school legislative side of city government, Steve Withers Jr., to come to the podium and just introduce the members of the school committee that are here this evening. Welcome.
Thank you, President Cook, and thank you for inviting us to before your honorable body to take part in this presentation for this important project for our city and our schools. Also here tonight from the school committee is Vice Chair Lori Scales, Secretary Bill Larson, Mike Tyler, Dave Quinn, Diane Sawyer, and Rob Geddes. From the administration, we have Superintendent Sawyer, Mark Furtado, Business Administrator in the background, and Principal of the high school, Bill Rooney. So again, thank you for inviting us to this presentation for a discussion on this important project. Thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you, and welcome. This time I would recognize Mr. Jack Jacoby. I guess he's going to serve as kind of like the master of ceremonies this evening, and there are also some people that you are going to introduce before we get into the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, President Cook, members of the council. Time flies when you're having fun. We realized that it was March when we last had a presentation over at the high school where we had you and the school committee members on the stage, and we have worked very hard in those 6 months, and we'd like to show you where we were then and where we are now. Just to remind you of where we were then, I'll steal a little bit of the superintendent's thunder just to say that you may remember we had 6 different plans under consideration back then, and now we've honed it down to one. You may also remember we have an owner's project manager, which is Skanska, and from Skanska we have Dale Caldwell, Carter Reich, and Mary Ann Williams. Are they somewhere around here? From our architects, Castle Booz, we have Joe Milani and Jim Mellinson. Close enough? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the superintendent come up and give you a PowerPoint presentation that will get you up to date on where we are. As long as he doesn't mind, I think if you have questions, he can field them as you go along, because it may be hard to remember all your questions till the end. And then just to give you a preview, the architects have a super-duper computer which unfortunately interfaces with this but doesn't interface with the cable. So we're not sure how much the people at home will see of that, but that allows us to do a fly around the building, to go around every aspect on the outside and actually go inside. It's like a drone flying around showing you what you're going to see. So with that, I'd like to ask Superintendent Dave Sawyer to come up and to give you the presentation, where we've been and where we're going.
Okay, before Mr. Sawyer begins, I just logistically, I'm going to ask council on this side if they want to move over to this side to see, and also the capital projects from Administrator Ms. Clark. She's going to take this seat because she has to take minutes on the meeting. So she's going to be sitting where Mr. Withers normally sits. If you want to either, there's 2 seats that are over here. Others, if you want to slide your chairs over, you may do that.
I'm going to sit next to him.
As I will be taking, I have to be taking the minutes because I do not have an admin assistant at the moment. So I'm going to be taking my notes and then working with Ms. Clark later to make sure that we've, if necessary, that we touch base so that, as you know, we need an official set from, the council meetings that we have.
Okay.
You guys are all set to see?
So are we ready to go?
Yes.
Then Superintendent.
Thank you very much and good evening. It's really an honor to present before you this evening and to share with you all that's been going on with our work on this project. When we last were all together back in March, we were making preparations for a March 22nd submission to the MSBA for our what's called a preliminary design program. At that time, we had ongoing development of multiple options in 3 categories of repair, renovate, and repair. And we were looking for, which option would best fit the needs of our students and best fit the abilities of the city to meet those needs. And so that's where we were when we last were together, and we've been quite busy since then. We have progressed through the MSBA's process. So we went with that preliminary design to a preferred option, which means that we took those multiple options and honed in on the one that we thought was the best option. We submitted that, and then from that process, we then were approved for schematic design, which is where we are now. And you have today the product of that schematic design process. So while we were doing all of that, there were multiple presentations up in Boston. We had to present to the board. We had to present to the Facilities Assessment Committee. Where there was lots of ongoing communication with the MSBA, in-person meetings, email communication, lots of back and forth feedback, and all of that was to help us to develop this proposal and to come up with the best plan possible. At the same time, we've been trying very hard to have an open, transparent process in which we communicate with the community. We have frequent SBC meetings. They started out at once a month, and then as things really started to ratchet up, we went to bi-weekly meetings, and these days we're pretty much meeting weekly. Those meetings, of course, are posted and they're open meetings, and so that's an opportunity for the entire community. And as we move forward, anyone that's interested, I would really invite them to come and watch us work. But we've also been touring the city and doing presentations, many of them through the schools. We've had large community presentations at the high school, but we've also gone out to the various elementary and middle schools to do presentations at the PTOs. We did a round back in the spring. We're currently in the midst of another round this fall with updated information, and we're also trying to reach out to groups. We've already presented at the Rotary, and we're making arrangements to meet with other groups in the community as well. All of our information is available on the city's website, the documentation, the reports that we've submitted, so anyone that wants to look into the work that's been done, that's all available. And of course, we've been working with the newspaper to keep people informed, both through their coverage of our process and also through various opinion pieces. So, through all of that work, we've learned quite a bit and have quite a bit to tell you about what we have found. All right, this part wasn't news to us. Attleboro High School is 57 years old. It is showing its age. It was not designed to last 57 years. As a result, several key systems are nearing failure. Notably, heating, plumbing, electrical, and windows all need to be replaced. I'll speak specifically to the heating system because I think it's most illustrative of the problems that we face with the current building. When they built the high school, A building specifically I'm talking about now, I guess it was the fashion at the time to save a little money by burying the steam pipes in the concrete slab. As a result, to repair the heating system when one of the steam pipes ruptures requires literally jackhammering into the slab, and not only to get to the leak, but you have to, because it's in the slab, you have to jackhammer out enough concrete to have a space to work around that pipe. That's just to repair the pipe. At 57 years old, the pipes are nearing the age at which they have to be replaced. And to replace the steam pipes at Attleboro High School will require completely ripping out that concrete slab to replace them. And this is a significant fact. Attleboro High School, like all schools, is grandfathered in for the codes as they existed when the building was built. The codes have significantly changed since the time the building was built. It does not have a fire suppression system. It is not ADA compliant, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It also does not meet current structural codes. It is not seismically braced, so it has it's a sound building up and down, but if with enough force from the side, you would have a problem. Now, earthquakes aren't a real concern in these parts, but I'm told that a strong enough hurricane theoretically could knock a building over. So these codes, again, we're grandfathered under them, and so the fact that we're not to these codes isn't a legal issue. Of course, as some of our families who have students with disabilities will tell you, that doesn't make it not a problem for us educating kids. But in terms of being okay legally, that's not the issue. The problem is that when you put all these repairs together, it costs $200 million to fix the things that are broken, plus all of those codes. And the code issue comes into play because at a certain threshold, which is a percentage of the value of the building, and it's estimated at around $10 million, any repairs totaling that amount trigger the requirement to bring the building up to code. So the heating system is nearing failure. It's going to require not only the replacement of the boiler, which is on its last leg, but also the replacement of all those heating pipes. To replace the heating pipes, you have to rip out the floors. That entire project will cost over $10 million, certainly. Once you spend that $10 million on the heating system, you now have to bring the building up to code. You have to do things like rip out the auditorium because the grade in the auditorium is too steep under ADA. You also have to address egress issues. There are plenty of parts of the building that don't have a second exit. So you have to start worrying about things like that. The building has multiple levels all over the place. All those have to have ramps installed to them. We have to put in a fire suppression system. But the buildings, the height of the ceiling is too low to put in the ductwork for both the heating, the fire suppression system, but also to put in the ductwork for a new heating system, which means that you're going to have to raise the roof on the building. So once the heating system goes, all these other projects become a requirement, and all of that adds up to $200 million. And it's important to note that that $200 million is just a repair. It's a repair of things that are broken, not the repair of everything in the building. It also doesn't in any way address any of the educational issues of the building. And it doesn't do anything else. And it's not built, a repair option is not designed as a 50-year option. So that $200 million is not buying you a new building, it's buying you a Band-Aid on a very old building. It's important to note that because it does not address the educational concerns, that we should address the fact that Attleboro High School was not designed to educate kids for the 21st century. In fact, the instructional practices that were imagined at the time of the building was built have more to do with the 19th century than they do the 21st. And to make this real, there are many classrooms at Attleboro High School in which there's literally one plug. To prepare kids for the world that they're going to enter into, to do the kinds of things that they're going to be asked to do, we need to provide them with the technology so that they can practice the skills and work on the kinds of things that they're going to have to do in the world. And that's hard to do when, if too many people plug things in, you blow a fuse, which is what we face now. So not only does the repair not address all the needs of the building, but it doesn't address that educational concern. And this is significant because the MSBA, it collects its money from a cent off of the sales tax. And it takes that money from the Commonwealth and it invests it in building projects across the Commonwealth for the good of the students in Massachusetts. And from their perspective, they want to invest wisely, right? And they do not see a repair option, a $200 million price tag on a repair option, as a wise investment, because it will not improve educational outcomes for the students of Attleboro. So for that reason, while they would, I think, and we're guessing, we're speculating, but it seems that they would support a repair of the boiler, all of those other things that come with that repair, all the code work and all the other things that we'd have to do, they would choose not to support us on that and say, that's on us, because from their perspective, the money spent isn't a good investment. And that's why those repairs would largely be left for us to pay for. So, upon approval, of this project, which we anticipate to happen in December, we would have 120 days to fund the project. Now, the scale of this project is such that the amount of money that would be needed, we would need to borrow to pay for it, is more than the city's debt capacity as it stands currently. And that is why we're really facing a debt exclusion as the way to fund this project. And I'm here to tell you that from my perspective, and I should note that I wear many hats, right? I'm a resident, I'm a parent in the school system, and I'm also the superintendent. And from all those perspectives, I'm here to tell you that this project is something that is important to both the school and the city. The rejection of a debt exclusion will not make the problem go away. The boiler is going to fail. And when that happens, we are faced with the reality that we will have to do something about it. So when that happens, we'll be facing a $200 million bill with little support from the state. And the point that I would like to make is that, and I have it there, I'll just read it to you, the negative impact of an unsubsidized city-funded repair of AHS will cripple the operating budgets for both the city and the schools. And that's the bottom line here, that when that happens, we're going to face the bill one way or the other. And so the option that the city has is not whether or not to do something about the high school, but it's whether or not to do it with the city, with the state paying half, or whether the city has to carry the bill itself. So that's the situation, and that is why we are advocating for the construction of a new high school, which, when we chose it as our preferred option, we did so because it was the one that not only would best met the needs of our students, but also happened to be the least disruptive and the cheapest. This is the site plan for the project. If you recognize, this is Studley Elementary, this is Brennan, this is the current Rathbone-Willard Drive, this is also Rathbone-Willard Drive. So the current high school currently sits, this is A building and B building sort of over here. And so what you'll see is that the plan would be to build the new high school on what is currently the parking lot and the baseball field. still facing Rathbun Willard Drive. We would then be able to put the parking lot where the building currently is, remove the fields that we're losing over here to this side, and basically keep everything on the same site. The other thing I would note about this site plan is that we have Rathbun Willard Drive being reconnected with a rotary up at this corner. I would encourage, if anybody has questions about this level of details, it's probably makes sense to ask them before we.
Okay. Does anybody at this point, any member of the council, have any questions at this point?
All right. So please feel free to stop me, because.
May I also ask if any members of the school committee have any questions at this time? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All right. So this is the first floor, the main floor of the building. The first thing I'd like you to notice is that it's a compact design. If you think about the current footprint of Attleboro High School, it's a large, sprawling building, as any student will tell you. If you have classes on one end and then the next period on the other end, it is difficult to get from one side to the other in under 5 minutes, right? I mean, it's a trek, and that's because the building is spread out over a large area. Right here, this building, very compact design, and not only do we think that that'll be better educationally, it certainly is a more efficient design. This is the front door, so Rathbun Willard Drive is up here. This is the main entrance for visitors. There'll be a nice secure entrance. You'll see how there's a series of doors that they have to get through to maintain security. And that's one of the things that we're very excited about this building. The old high school, if you're familiar with it, has almost 60 different doors, which makes it very, very difficult to ensure that all those doors are closed, locked, and that no one's coming in them. This building has very few entrances. There will be a security system that will allow us to not only keep them locked, but monitor them from one set location to ensure the safety of our students. There are other doors, though. The back is where most students will be coming in during the morning. Buses will be coming in from this direction, student parking from this direction. The only students who will be coming in this door are people who are dropping their kids off. There'll be a drop-off right here. So this large area right here is the cafeteria. It's a large space. It allows us to go from our current 4 lunches a day down to 3 lunches a day, which will improve our ability to create a schedule. Right now, we're sort of hamstrung by the fact that we can't do 3 lunches because our cafeteria space is too small. And the other thing that's really nice about this space is that when you take the chairs and the tables out of that space, you have a very large space, a community space that is later in the presentation you'll see how it's an impressive looking space, but also a great functional space for this community. That space will hold the entire student body when you take the furniture out of it. So this is the kitchen, so the kids will come in to get their lunches in this area. This part of the building is one of the CTE wings. This has its own door outside because these programs interface with the public. We have culinary, graphic design, and cosmetics up at that end of the building, and that allows people to easily enter the building and receive services from those programs. This would be a great benefit to our students to have regular business from the community to provide them with the learning experiences that they'll need to advance their skills and prepare them for the workforce. We currently already have graphic design and culinary in the building serving the public, but because they are buried deep in that sprawling building, I think a lot of people aren't aware that you could go there, culinary for lunch, and even if you knew you could, you might be a little bit intimidated by trying to find it. So by moving up to the front of the building, we think we will increase access and really improve the quality of the learning experiences for our students. Central office is over here. And next to that is our child care program. Again, with its own entrance so that people that are coming in from the community can access it directly, and that we can make sure that the kids in that program are safe. We're also moving Project Connect, which is at the Briggs Corner School currently, into this space By bringing them together, we think we will improve the quality of the experience for the kids in that program. The space that they're out there at Briggs Corner is an aging space, and they don't have a lot, they only have the resources they have. This way they can share resources with our child care program. And we also like the idea of having the connections between the people that are in that program and connecting them to the schools in a way that they currently don't see that connection. We lose families sometimes to other communities when they love that program, but they don't see it as being part of the Attleboro Public Schools, even though it is. The other CTE programs are over here. Autos right there, so people will be able to drive in and out. You'll notice that the gymnasium is here with locker rooms, and this is the auditorium. So basically you have a central spine that allows circulation between the different parts of the building, and then you have these different sections down on the first floor. No academic classrooms on the first floor, but lots of these other programs. And this wall right here, this is a glass wall that you'll see a little bit later that opens out onto the stadium is right here. So we really believe that it's going to integrate very nicely with the site as it already exists. Any questions about the first floor?
Anybody have any questions regarding the first floor? Okay.
All right, so if we move up to the second floor, we see the continuation. So this is still the gymnasium. Actually, that's a two-story structure. Again, the auditorium has a balcony, so that's also a two-story structure. We have a few more CTE programs on the second floor down or on top of them over here. We have art classes here, nurse's office. You'll see that the cafeteria is open to the second floor, and there's a balcony around it. Again, that really helps to create a wonderful space. Over here, we have our alternative programming, the ACA and the network. And then now we move up to the front of the building, and we start to see the definition of our academic spaces.
You'd bring network to the high school?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank
Yes.
you.
So you'll notice, all right, these are administrative offices for the high school. So the Attleboro High School is broken currently into houses. Those houses help us to break down the scale of the building. One of the things we know as educators is that the relationships we make with kids make all the difference in terms of their overall academic success, and that while there are great advantages to having a large high school like Attleboro High School, it allows us to offer programming that other schools couldn't possibly do because of economies of scale. One of the downsides to having a large high school is that it can feel very large, and you can easily get lost in a building of that size. So by breaking the building down into houses, we try to create smaller scales so that kids can get to know people and make those relationships. We already have that structure, although I have to tell you, the layout of our current building really sort of undermines our ability to make the most of those structures. This building is designed specifically to capitalize on those houses. So you start to see how we have 4 houses, and they are defined structurally by the building, and they are vertical. So they exist, all 4 of them are on each of the 3 academic floors, the second, the third, and the fourth floor. They go vertically. And so each of them has their own house office, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where the dean's offices would be, and these are academic classrooms. Again, this would be the classes for this house, this would be the classes for this house, and this house. All right, so I'm going to go up to the 3rd floor unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions on the second floor? Again, if you have questions, just raise your hand and let me know so I can start them to Mr. Sawyer. Okay, going to the 3rd floor.
All right, so when we get to the 3rd floor, we're now just up in the front of the building. And again, we see the further development of these houses. So you've got the structure of the 4 houses. We have a media center in the middle of the building, centrally located. We also have stairwells up to the 4th floor in each house, which helps to connect the houses, again, vertically, and also helps to bring natural light down from the 4th floor down into the 3rd floor, which we think is going to help to create a nice, pleasant environment that will allow kids to actually make use of the flexible space we've created out in the halls where kids can do collaborative work in breakout spaces. And then up on the 4th floor, it's more of the same. with the different houses. And again, the media center again is in the middle, and it has a balcony right there. That's open to that's out down to the 3rd floor, and this is up on the 4th floor. So that's the floor plan for the building.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the floor plan? Even though the floor is already bypassed or already covered at this point? Okay, thank you.
So here's what she looks like when you step outside of it, right? So this again is the front of the building. So we're over kind of near Rathbun Willard Drive, and you'll see the definition of the 4 houses. You can they stand out in the design, so you can see them visually from the building. You have the central clear location. I tell you, it's one of the toughest things about Attleboro High School is that when people who don't know the building come there, they don't know where to go. They don't know what door to go to. And I mean, literally on the way out the door today, someone stopped me. I don't know where to go. Where am I? I'm supposed to be here. We think it's a huge advantage that we're going to have a very clearly marked front entrance so people know how to get into the building. It seems like a simple thing, but it'll be an improvement. And you can see, so it's these 4-story structures up at the front. But when you go to the back, it has a little bit of a different look. And again, there's that cafeteria with the glass wall, the student entrance on the back. It's looking out onto the stadium, which is over here. And you can see that gymnasium and auditorium. I should go back and mention, I forgot to, and I apologize, on the site plan. So again, that's where we just were. We were kind of over here. I should say that the plan includes, here is the student parking. We have photovoltaics in the parking lot, so we're going to put up solar panels. It creates almost like a carport. They have them in other parts of the country. I've seen them in Florida personally. I know other people have seen them in other places. And those solar panels help us to get our LEED certification, which adds a 2% increase on our reimbursement rate. So that brings in millions of dollars into the project. And it also will produce, we estimate, about 5% of our electrical usage each year, which will help to. Yeah, only 5. Yeah. I had that right, Joe, right?
Yeah, it's a big building.
Big building.
250 kilowatts.
I'm sorry. What,
250 kilowatts.
So that's out in that student parking lot. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So when you're here, you're coming in from the student lot, and that's the bus loop right there. So that's the basic layout of the building. We're very excited about it because we believe that it will meet the needs of our students and preparing them for the 21st century. And we think it'll do so in a way that is most responsible for grappling with the crisis that we face, in that the building that we currently have is nearing failure and will require drastic action in a very short time frame. And by doing it this way, it will be the least impact on the city's finances, although certainly a significant project any way you do it. So if we're ready, I think the next thing we should do is do the virtual tour of the building.
nice.
Okay. Mr. Sorry, before we do the virtual tour, I'm going to ask one more time. Are there any questions at this point on the presentation on what Mr. Sawyer has already presented? Any member of the council? Any member of the school committee? I know you guys have seen this on many occasions, but okay, we'll go on to the virtual tour then.
Okay.
I think we just need a moment to switch over.
Yeah, they'll need a moment to switch over, and I thought I'd take that opportunity to just give you a preview of what the timing is that we're talking about here. We are scheduled next Wednesday, the 1st, as the school building committee to vote to submit this plan that you're seeing to the state. November 9th is the date that we have to submit. They are scheduled on December 13th to have a board meeting at which we hope and expect that they will approve our plan and offer us a contract. And they offer us a contract that triggers our 120-day time frame to show that we can fulfill our portion of the contract. And as the superintendent said, the only way we can do that is with a debt exclusion. The mayor will be sending down to your council a proposal for a vote. We've targeted March 6th, 2018 for that vote. Our drop dead date would then be in April because of the 120 days from the December 13th vote of the state. So we figured that March 6th would give 3 months for a campaign for those who were for and those who were against, and we would be able to have a vote at that time. In the event that that passes, we would then enter into that contract with the state. We would then enter into the next phase of design with our architects, overseen by our owner's project manager. It would take them about a year to have this ready for bid. So therefore, in the spring of 2019, we would hope to start construction on the school and finish in time for September of 2022 to have the students move in. Then, after the students move from the old school, we would take the next year and a half to knock down the old one and rebuild the fields as you saw on the site plan. So that's the timeline that we're looking at here. It seems like a long time out, but things have moved so quickly in the last 2 years that we've been working on this that I expect that time to fly by as well. And I certainly hope that our community gets behind this and passes it, because I think this is an exciting project for a lot of reasons. And just before Jim starts, I just want to emphasize one thing that the superintendent said. It is rare that the best plan causes the least disruption and costs the least. We feel blessed that the plan that we chose turned out to meet all of our objectives. We looked at 2 plans that were additions and renovating the rest of the school. We looked at 3 different plans for new schools. We, along the way, rejected another 6 plans. So we actually had about 12 plans that we seriously considered. But when we got to the state in March, we were down from 12 to 6. In June, we went from 6 to 1. And now we've been developing this plan. The disruption to the educational process of having workers in an occupied school taking 7.5 years to build was something that we wanted to avoid. This way, when the new building is ready, the teachers and the kids pick up their stuff and they walk next door. And then we start knocking down the old building. So there will be as small a disruption as possible. I'm not going to tell you there won't be any disruption because we'll be building a school next to the old one, but we believe that we can keep this to a minimum. One other thing about the site, obviously we're going to lose the parking lot. And so we have approached the park commissioners, and they have voted in principle to allow us to pave
O'Connell Field.
O'Connell Field. We have a lot of details to work out on that. And
Right, how are we going to have farmer's market there? I'm just kidding. Just keep going.
And we were very sensitive to that, and we don't know if you want to be on pavement or somewhere else in the park, but the park commissioners said that they would work that out with you. But we had no other choice because there would be no other place to park. We couldn't park kids at Hayward Field and have shuttle buses running back and forth. We were really in a position where we had no other choice, and we are grateful to the park commissioners for agreeing to cooperate with us. That is what I had to say. If you have no questions, we're going to give you the drone view of everything. So,
Before you begin the virtual reality tour, I just want to announce to all of my colleagues that when we are asked to make the vote to put this on the ballot, because it's a debt exclusion, this will require a 2/3 vote of the full council. It's not a simple majority, it's a 2/3 vote. If this was an override, it would just be a simple majority, but because it's a debt exclusion, it does require a 2/3 affirmative vote of the council. I just wanted that to be on the record now. I want everybody to be aware of that before any such request comes
But
back.
then I understand it's a majority vote of the citizens who show up to
Exactly.
vote that day.
Exactly.
So, so there's a difference there in the percentage. So, thank you, President Cook. So are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Joe, do you want to, or Dave, do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
So basically, I think what we'll do is we'll go fully around the building, and then we'll go into the cafeteria. Does that make sense? So, yeah, let's go that way. Perfect. So this is the bus loop. And we've got the auditorium on the left. And these are our CTE programs. I think carpentry's the first one. I forget the exact order, but I do know that auto's on the end. Which would be right there. So you drive your car. I don't know if that's in or out. Now I'm flying. Again, this is the CTE wing on both floors. Right there.
This isn't a program tour. You can go anywhere you want, so if you see someplace you want to hone in on to view it, just let us know and he can stop and show you rules.
So this is the end of the classroom wing.
If you go back just one moment, we can point out that this entrance right here is not actually a public entrance. This would be the teacher's entrance from the teacher's parking lot, and that will have a secure system, so they'll swipe or some way or other to get in. That will not be any place that the public has access to.
So that area right there is the playground for the child care center. And here we come up to the front of the building. Again, you can see how the four houses are pronounced as we move. So that would be the door to people who are visiting central office, and the security works such that you get into central office, but you don't get into the rest of the building. And then that would be the front entrance to visitors to the high school. And then the third house, and we have the entrance to the CTE programs.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Parika?
Thank you, President Cook. So in the front part of the building, you'll be able to park, like, visitors who are coming from outside as not school participants, but like that community as a whole can park in front.
Yes, they'll be
Similar to
parking.
how they do in the superintendent loop now, but with much more
With enough
parking
spots to actually make it
to
useful.
make it work. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we tried to do in the site plan was to take the teacher parking, the student parking, the bus loop, the drop-offs, and separate them all to the greatest extent possible, because if you have been out there in the morning now, you know it's kind of interesting. And so, you know, paying attention on
Yeah.
the site there to...
Won't be like Fury Road anymore.
yeah.
Thank you.
So then we get to the end of the, again, the academic space, the four-story academic space, come around the corner. Following along the newly reconnected Rathbun Willard.
That's the loading dock.
Yep, so that's the loading dock, so that's where it's, you know, culinary is right there on the end, so they'll have, you know, their deliveries they'll be close to their deliveries to the kitchen for the cafeteria will be close to that space as well, plus custodial deliveries as well. And then that's the entrance to, again, our alternative programming, the ACA and the network are through that door. As we come around, those are the locker rooms.
Councilor Parikh, you had a question?
Thank you. So locker room specifically for the gymnasium, and will there be lockers inside or no lockers? Inside the school in general?
So we had we've had quite a bit of conversation about lockers. There are lockers in the building. In fact, there's quite a few lockers, but most of the lockers are going to be program specific. So you know, if you're in a CT program, your locker's in your CT space. We also have lockers in performance spaces. So for students that do after-school activities, they have locker space as well. And then students will have access to their locker for their sport during season. So when you add all those lockers up, there's a pretty significant number. But what you will not have is, on top of all those lockers lining the halls. We do have a set number. I think we did, what, 25 per house, or did we do 50?
Yeah, with 200 lockers.
So 50 per house?
50 per house.
So there are 50 lockers per house in the actual house structure for some students who, you know, that doesn't fit them. But we believe that that'll be enough lockers to meet the need.
If I can just, I agree that it's, everyone throws their backpack.
Yeah, we had quite a. Please, Bill.
I think one of the things that that superintendent directed me to investigate was to put together a focus group. We sent out a survey to our existing students. The reality is that the culture at the high school is not such that students are using lockers. And I think one of the most compelling points that the students on the focus group brought up is they said, Mr. Rooney, at this point, we're probably about 70% of our resources are digital anyway. We would hope that by the time this new building opens with a significant increase in the instructional technology, that we would be close to 100% digital resources. So at that point, you're not carrying around a lot of books and things like that. And I've been a high school educator for 31 years, and high school students have a sense of invincibility. And so they're not coming in with huge coats and galoshes and boots and things like that. They typically have a hoodie or a North Face jacket, and that's really about it. So we did feel that that our performing arts students who have been at a little bit of a disadvantage based on some of the spaces in our music room and in our art area, that they deserve to have some dedicated locker spaces. The CTE, as the superintendent said, the CTE shops will have dedicated locker spaces as well. And so many of our students at the high school are involved in something throughout the course of the year. So whether it's athletics, the school play, a CTE program, so we're confident that all students that want to have access to a locker will be able to have that at some point.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
Do you have a question out on the floor?
Yep.
Where is our transportation going to be located, and where are those drivers going to be coming in and out of, and where are those vans going to be located?
So I don't know where the vans are located specifically, but the transportation office is in central office, and in fact, it is off of the entrance to central office. There's like a welcome center, and the programs that have the most interaction with walk-in community members are all right off of that space, and transportation is one of them. That we get a lot of foot traffic for transportation, so they'll be right there to interact with the public. It won't be hard to find.
And that's where the drivers will go in and
No. I mean, the drivers aren't in there, although there certainly is space in the building. Do you know exactly? Yeah.
I know the park. We have to work out the parking arrangements.
Okay.
All right. So we're back to where we basically started at the back door. At this time, we'd like to actually enter into that cafeteria, which again we think is one of the real highlights of the building. So at the far end of the room, you'll see that those windows are into the library media center, right up in there, yep. You have windows along the top to let in natural light. If we look in the other way, you've got the gym on the right, you've got the auditorium on the left. And that large space that we think that the city of Attleboro can use in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, if I can add, one of the things that always amazed me was that when we had a function in the auditorium, that there was no place to come out afterwards for the cup of coffee, the cake, the other sorts of things. We've arranged this so that the cafeteria is available halftime of a basketball game, intermission of something in the auditorium, or before or after. It ends up being a staging area and an area that's very useful for events that are occurring in the nighttime. So we paid attention to that.
And again, it'll be looking out onto the stadium.
Councilor Hall?
Yes. I noticed the balconies that you have. Do you have those types of balconies in the facility right now? Sort of an open balcony?
We do have balconies at the high school. It's
balconies and railings of that sort?
Not open railings like that.
You will see half-height walls.
Yeah.
In the media center area.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Where the assistant principals and some of our other student support services are located on the third floor of the library area, there's a balcony area that looks over, but it's not anywhere near as impressive as this in terms of the interaction between students and the rest of the school community.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Quinn, is it?
Thank you, Mr. President. One question I had about was the design of the cafeteria, particularly the lines. I mean, we're expanding the number of students. I know that school lunches are pretty short in time now. Do we have kind of I know there's a human element to this, but do we have kind of an estimated wait time or like a max wait time with the cafeteria? I guess I'm just thinking about, we're putting more students in that space. How is the cafeteria or the kitchen being designed to minimize those wait times?
So I know that a consultant was used to design the space. We went with a scramble server, which the consultant tells us is the one that will allow us to move the greatest number of kids in the shortest amount of time, and that we will be able to do a third of the building in a 20-minute lunch with the design as proposed.
And just so everybody knows, one choice is a straight line. The traditional cafeteria line, moving your tray along, takes a lot longer than having stations, and you go to the area you want to go to, and you don't have to wait in line behind people who are getting things that you don't want. So we looked at that pretty carefully to make sure that we could do that. And of course, if you've been in the high school, you realize we really have 12 lunches, not 4, because we have 3 floors of cafeteria, all of which are too small. So this allows us to change the block system for the better and have more time on education, as I understand it.
Toward that point, and also to Mr. Quinn's question, the last high school that I worked at had exactly the type of system that Mr. Jacoby just explained, and the student population was probably the same, or perhaps a little bit larger than perhaps the same as Attleboro's. And with the different stations, it was amazing how many students could be moved through within that allotted time space that your consultants found also. So it's a common approach nowadays in comparison with what it used to be. Much more efficient, better use of time, better use of food, services, and so forth. So, Councilor Parika had a question, and then Mr. DeLisio, did you have one? No, Councilor Parika?
So, in theory, because we currently have 3 cafeterias that serve 4 lunches, and we'll reduce it to 1 cafeteria that serves 3 lunches, they wouldn't necessarily require an increase in cafeteria staff. Would that be an accurate statement? Because we already have staffing in place for that. There might be need for a few people, but not.
I can't say that I know exactly the answer to that, but my sort of working assumption has been that it'll actually be more efficient.
Right.
Right, because you're spreading too many people over too many, yes.
And we already.
You have to serve tacos in 3 places, right?
I think what I meant was, is that it makes it sound like we're gonna need 12, if we have 12 stations, we need 12 bodies manning those stations. And that would be, I can only imagine would be a future question coming down to me saying, well, we're supposed to be hiring teachers, but we have to hire new cafeteria staff instead. So that was just one way to kind of diffuse that particular question.
Yeah, we already have a scramble servery of sorts. It's just that you have to scramble up 3 floors. My son likes the pizza on the B2 cafeteria, but if he chooses to eat with people that are on the B3 cafeteria, then he has to go to a different place. So I do feel confident that we're gonna increase instructional time. I think the superintendent made the point about the footprint of the building being smaller. We can look at a schedule where maybe instead of 5 minutes between classes, maybe we can get it done in 4. To be able to maximize the time on learning.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Delicio, you have a question, right?
What's the seating capacity for the cafeteria?
600.
Okay,
The school's sized for 1725.
thank you.
You could seat, if you would have as loose chairs, you could seat the entire student body in there, but with the round tables, it comfortably seats the 600 students.
Yeah, so one of the advantages of this space is that you can actually run an event from the stairs, and you can put the entire school in there, because we cannot have an auditorium by the MSBA's rules that is as large as the one we have now. We have 1,200 seats now. We're going to be down to
865.
860 something, and we had to get a special waiver from them to be able to get up to that size. They have one set of rules that says you should be able to put 2/3 of your kids in, and then they have another absolute square foot limit. And when those clash, the square foot limit wins. So we've paid attention to making the auditorium as efficient as we can with the size they allow us to have, but also knowing that we have this space right next door to it, which is available. I believe the gym is now going to be larger. I mean, of course, in the current school, we have 2 gyms. We have the large gym and the small gym. We will only have 1 gym, but it will be larger than the current large gym.
The way the MSBA looks at it from gymnasium space is number of instructional spaces. And so the fact that we have 2 gymnasiums now, they allowed us to build 1 gymnasium large enough to be able to have enough instructional opportunities in that one space.
And with movable partitions, so it can be divided up into teaching stations.
Mr. Jacoby, if I may, there are a couple of follow-up questions, but as you know, I'm trying to take notes since I no longer have a full-time admin person. No, that's all right. I can't see too well. Who was the other person sitting here who's sometimes making comments? I can't. I'm blocked.
Milani is our architect from Joe Milani.
Okay. Would you spell the last name, please?
Yeah.
And Joe is architect with Castle Booze Associates.
Belk needs his name spelled.
Okay, thank you. Did you get the spelling? Okay, we're all set. Thank you. Councilor Delicio had a follow-up, and then Councilor Hall had a question. Thank you.
So,
and then Councilor Conti. So Mr. Delicio, then Ms. Hall, and then Mr. Conti. Thank you.
for the cafeteria utilization, if we're losing capacity in the auditorium, I'm thinking towards graduation, is the plan to have additional bodies in the cafeteria for that point for graduation, or for times when it's inside?
I think for graduation, we will have a larger gym.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, I was in the unenviable position of having to make a decision back in June, and we decided at the literally 11th hour, I think, that we had to move it inside. And when the lightning started crackling overhead, I felt vindicated.
You made the right one.
You did it.
But the fact that we have to limit the number of tickets for attendees when it is in the gym, as Mr. Jacoby said, a much larger gym now that would be climate controlled would probably be our first option. But this beautiful space would be something that we certainly would investigate the possibility of a ceremony.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hall, and then Councilor
Yes.
Conti?
And I apologize if you're going to get to this in your virtual tour, but I have a great love for the CTE program. And so where is the culinary? Is it located near this area so that if there were functions as you've done in the past?
I'll take you right there.
It's around the corner. And I know that Principal Rooney wanted to address you all on the programs that we have and the programs we're adding. So that may be a good segue to him after we get down this hall. I'm amazed at the technology that allows us to walk through the buildings.
So the culinary program isn't co-located with the cafeteria? It's a ways, okay.
The positioning of the loading dock, we received so many deliveries to be able to have the food be as fresh as possible, but also to make sure that we're not over ordering and having food go to waste. We did discuss that with the MSBA. They provided us some feedback on that, but we made the decision to keep it in the mall area, but to have it in a place where it was more practical with the loading dock. With the way our culinary program already transports food to B1 for certain functions. Like the Big Read has a function at the high school tonight. I believe they're using the bistro, but there have been times past where they've used B1 cafeteria. So although it would be a longer trek to the cafeteria, that's part of the relevant experience for our culinary students.
But it looks like you have yes, thank you. But it looks like this is closer to the culinary program then. This is the
so it has almost. This is the restaurant associated with the program.
Okay.
It's the new bistro.
The new bistro.
It's at the front of the building in that public interaction.
Okay.
Right. Without going back on the computer, if you look at the floor plan of the first floor, you will see probably the second page you have there in your package. You will see over on the top left the entrance to the CTE mall, and you'll see there's a hallway that goes back behind it.
Oh, I see.
And that's controlled access so that teachers and students with access can get through there. But they actually could come down the hall to the cafeteria from there. But you have to. In a building of $260 million, you have 260 million decisions to make.
That's okay. You answered it fine.
So that's we.
Thank you.
We've been weighing these things carefully.
Okay. Councilor Conti?
Thank you.
Yes, you were talking about the auditorium, and I think it's appropriate to talk about the scale of this building. This is a very, very, very large building. That auditorium is 45 feet high. The walls in that auditorium are 45 feet tall. That front wall is 150 feet wide, and that's smaller than the back wall, which is even bigger. And it's 220 feet from the glass wall to the front wall. So the volume of that auditorium alone is bigger, almost bigger than City Hall. That's enormous. The front wall of this building that faces Rathburn William is 45 feet tall and 467 feet long. It's enormous. This scale that we're looking at is 1/64 of an inch to a foot. It doesn't do it justice. This is a very, very large building. I'm pleased with the revised fascia. I think it's going to look very, very nice. I'm glad that it's evolved to where it is. But I wouldn't want to be standing on a corner during a windstorm. Because that's going to be incredible. I mean, you could almost hang glide off the top of this building. It's a very big face. The other thing that you didn't touch upon, Mr. Sawyer, and I wonder if the school has given any consideration that if this building is constructed at its plan, is this a 50-year building? Is this a 75-year building? Is this a 100-year building?
So the answer is it's at least a 50-year building, and that we are hopeful that it'll be more than that.
Is it possible that in this building, unlike the other building, that as society evolves, as learning evolves, that we might be able to make adaptations to this current building so that it would never need to be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, the CTE spaces especially, who knows what, I mean, already we know that the kids that we're educating today will have jobs that don't exist currently. So that's only going to accelerate. So we have to have a building that's going to allow us to, as nimbly as possible, make adjustments and say, okay, you know, that's the new horse and buggy of the 21st century. It's going away. We need to adjust and start training kids in this field that we didn't even anticipate. And so the spaces are largely just open boxes that you know, you can adjust as needed as we see fit.
So when we constructed the athletic field, the school committee put into effect a revolving account so that when fees were used to rent the field, the money was put aside in a fund that will be there 25 years when that field needs to be replaced. The leading question that I gave you was that when we build this building for $265 million, is that the time to be thinking in a longer term plan, longer than your 5-year plan, which by the way is really very good, where this building might have a additional budget for those renovations at say year 5 or year 10, where it's shown that there is an evolution and that a room needs to be remodeled or reconstructed, so that we may never have to go through another debt exclusion to build another giant school.
Yeah, I mean, there are buildings that if you stay up with the maintenance over time, you can keep them for long periods of time, and you can renovate them as you go and make the adjustments, and they can last well past 50 years. The two problems we have at the high school is that some of the projects that need to be done have needed to be done for so long that it's sort of past that moment. And then the other thing is that just an accident of timing, I guess, the way that particular building was built does not lend itself to being maintained. It's just,
But we're confident at this point.
But we're designing a building that's not going to put us in that position again.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? The school committee?
If I can add a few numbers
Mr. Kobe?
to what Councilor Conti was asking. Actually, the front facade of the school is over 700 feet long. And the current school is 428,000 square feet, which is spread out enormously, as we've said. This one is somewhere around 475 to 480. But the reason for the increase is adding some CTE programs, 4 of them, and I know that the principal wants to talk to you about that. And also that the programs that are open to the public now are just buried inside the building, and getting them up front. We actually have a branch of Bristol County Savings Bank in the building. Not many people know that. We have a banking program that kids are in. One of the programs we're adding is cosmetology. Well, if you're going to come in, get your hair done, and get your oil changed on your car, we'd like to make it accessible to you. So, Bill?
Thank you. Obviously, we're very sensitive to the financial implications of this. A $265 million project, from what I understand, will be the largest capital project in the city's history, and we realize that there are people concerned about the debt exclusion, but I think that there are some financial implications of the new design. Obviously, the superintendent has said before that the way that we are trying to heat the current building is like trying to heat a screen porch. You can imagine how much heat we're losing through these 57-year-old windows, with poor ventilation, 57 or 58 doors. The energy efficiency, the photovoltaics that we're going to be adding. We feel that the operational costs are going to go down, which then are going to, enhance the budget that the school committee and the superintendent can look at in terms of staffing and programming and things like that. But we also are extremely proud of our CTE programs at the high school. We currently have 12. And in this new design, we have approval from the Department of Ed to add 4 more As Jack mentioned, cosmetology is going to be a part of the CTE model, but we're also adding dental assisting, HVAC, and robotics. And we feel that those are 4 very relevant programs. We feel that people are always going to need to get their hair done. People are always going to need to have work on their teeth. And homes are always going to need to be cooled off or warmed up. And robotics, obviously, are the wave of the future. And one of the things that sometimes is underestimated about the CTE program is that we get an additional reimbursement from the state for every student who participates in the CTE program. It's roughly $4,500 more. So just using some round numbers, if a student is not enrolled in a CTE program, the reimbursement is around $8,000. And for students that are in CTE programs, we would get an additional $4,500. So the superintendent and I have a goal, along with our CTE director, to not only increase the enrollment based on the 4 new programs, but to increase enrollment within our existing programs. So we feel that that's going to be a financial influx for us as well. And then 4 new programs would also bring students to us who had traditionally gone to Tri-County. So that saves us financially as well.
Yeah, we pay a large sum to send those kids over. They have the right to go there if we can't provide the education. And I heard a number, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's around $18,000 a year that we spend to send a kid over there. And bringing those kids back is in our best interest. So adding these 4 programs is important for the long-term fiscal viability of our school department. And as Bill was saying, the maintenance is required, certainly, but we're not going to be spending large sums fixing things in a brand new building. And the energy costs, should be controllable. So we see this building as having a couple of different goals. One goal is to give the 21st century education, but another goal is to have it contribute to the long-term fiscal viability of the school department. And we're mindful of both of those goals in getting this done. And of course, we want to avoid the catastrophic problem where we then have to go out for a debt exclusion for $200 million instead of $130, and then charge the average homeowner $600 instead of $400 a year to put the Band-Aids on the school that the superintendent described in the beginning. So there are a lot of good reasons to do this project. You can choose whichever one you like. I like all of them.
One more comment about the size of the building. It is an enormous building, one of the biggest in the state. And if you look at most communities that are similar to ours, a more common setup would be to have 2 or more high schools. It's very common for cities to have an academic high school and a vocational high school. Lots of cities across the Commonwealth have that set up. And, I think in the former superintendent, Bob Quello's infinite wisdom, we brought them together into a comprehensive high school here in Attleboro. And as a result, Attleboro High School is really 2 schools. And you gain, through the course of the life of that building, you gain on the economy of the scale of having only one building where you have 2 schools in that building. Just the problem is that once every 50 years, you got the double whammy of replacing it. But that is why that building is so large. It's not due to any extravagances.
Councilor Parker?
Would it be fair to say that it's actually more than 2 schools, with not only the CTE program, the regular educational programming, but all of the other supplemental, like network and things like that. It's more than that.
In programming, we do way more than 2 things, and I don't mean to slight the other things that we do. I'm just saying that there aren't a lot of schools this large, and there's a reason for that. So it results in a building this big.
I was just kind of adding to I'm not going to say it's an argument, but I'm just adding to that as well, is that there are other communities that those kind of programs are as they are now, but you'll be bringing them all in-house.
That's right. We have significant use of a 100-year-old building on County Street that used to be the high school. Shutting that building down and selling it off and not maintaining it and not heating it, that's also good. So making this building the right size to have everything in one place, and it's good for those students because those students now have access to programs that they didn't have access to when they were in another remote building. So that's another important factor in the educational process.
Councilor Jackson?
Thank you. How many more students do you anticipate having in the school by 2022?
So the MSBA, at the very beginning of the process, required they did their own estimates on projections of what the total enrollment would be, and that's where they arrived at that 1725. They believe that 1725 is the size of the building that we will need for the foreseeable future. But it's important to note that that figure of 1725 is at 85% occupancy, which means that there's that means that if you had 1,725 kids in the building, and currently we have 16.
We're at 1712.
Oh, we've grown.
Yes, we have. We're popular.
If you had the 1725 and you had them in the classrooms, you'd have 15% of the building empty at 1725. So even at 1725, there's room within the building to grow.
That's good. I think that's the first in Attleboro, because most of the time when we do open up, by the time we open up a new school, it's like we've overgrown wherever the school has been opened. So that's good to hear. And I really do anticipate watching, if this does happen, the maintenance of the building. I forget who was mentioning that earlier, but that's something that we've run into with every new building. It's never overseen, the maintenance of a building. A building just deteriorates because nobody ever oversees that. So that will be nice, especially with all that beautiful glass.
Yes.
Actually, there may be less glass in this building than in the old building. And our architect is actually performing that calculation just because the building sprawls. But one other thing on the class size, we currently have classrooms that have 720 or so square feet in them, and we're sometimes putting 28 and 30 kids in those classes. 32. And the state requires us to have a minimum size in the classroom of 850 square feet, and that's sized for 24 students, and then with the 85% factor. So we think we have a significant space to grow. If we ended up with 2,000 students in school, I think we feel confident that we could house them very, very adequately without causing a problem. And as you know, of course, population always, goes on the sine curve. But we were, one of the first things we were concerned with was making sure that the school was the right size.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Okay. Mrs. Sawyer? Anything else that you want to add?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you can tell, we're excited.
Yes.
Obviously.
I think we all are.
Are there any other questions from the council on this presentation? Are there any questions from school committee members at this time? Well, again, Mr. Jacoby, Mr. Rooney, Mrs. Sawyer, Mr. Maloney, thank you for your presentation to us tonight, and we'll wait to see what happens in the coming days and weeks and take it from there. So,
Thank you.
I do want to thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
So that is all the business before the council for this evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. The motion is in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned at 7:18. Thank you very much.
Yeah,